I hope I don't have anything in my teeth. I just finished lunch. I should have flossed beforehand, but no time for that. Welcome, everyone. This is the Cosmic Conversation. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Stacy and Charlie's Angel. So nice to see you. And the Eclectic Witch. Welcome, welcome, everyone. I'm so excited. Hi, Baggins. I'm going to be speaking with Danielle. Let's see if I can. Welcome, welcome. I hope everyone is having a good Friday. I hope everyone is having a good Friday. Yes, yes, I know. It's almost the eclipse. Ah, yeah, so sad about the huge earthquake in Myanmar. Earthquakes often coincide with eclipses throughout history. So it's not surprising with Neptune at 29, Pisces to move into the sign of Aries. That's a little concerning about the potential for, really big water stuff. So a potential tsunami or thing. So be careful if you're going to the beach. Yes. And it could be, something big. Yeah. But hopefully they will. It says you're unable to join, Danielle. Oh, no. Mm. Oh, wait, here. Let me hit accept again. Mercury's retrograde, or the day before the eclipse. Yay! Yay, yay, yay. You were able to join.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's been a while, so it's so nice to catch up with you again. I'm looking forward to talking about this topic.
Yeah.
Learning from you. So why don't you introduce yourself to people?
Okay. So my name is Danielle Ashley, and I've got my name currently as Danielle Ashley Healing. I've got Pluto transiting my ascendant, so I keep changing my identity. And I am a practicing Chinese medicine doctor, a nutritionist, and also I work with sound healing, medical astrology, and predictive astrology. So I love all kinds of astrology, and I usually try and incorporate that into my clinic, but also do separate consultations with astrological things.
I love that. And so you're an Aquarius rising, is that right?
That's right.
And what's your sun and moon? Can you share it?
Yeah, I've got the sun in the 12th house in Capricorn. Which is why this type of thing's a little bit like nerve-wracking for me, but it's really good to push that sun out there. And I've also got my moon in Scorpio, so my moon's in the 10th house.
Well, perfect. You're a born healer. Absolutely. And can you tell people what it's been like, before we get into it, what it's been like having Pluto on your ascendant? I mean, it's a big thing about changing identity.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful for people to hear from people experiencing it.
Yeah. So it's been a fairly long transit. It's still going. It was hardest in the first couple of hits. So, a couple of years ago, just that impending feeling of, it moving up to there, it was very, I think anything that wasn't fitting in my life, anything that I was doing that was counterproductive or counterintuitive to my essence, like who I really am and what I'm here to do, which is all, the ascendants all speaks to that. Any of that is out of alignment was really pulled apart and just dismantled. And also because Pluto is on the ascendant, it's actually partile square to my moon Pluto conjunction in the
So you're having the Pluto square and Pluto on your ascendant at the same time.
Absolutely.
So it's like a double. Yep. And Pluto square your moon. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's sort of like step into your power, do what you're here to do, and don't mess around, because you haven't got the opportunity anymore. We're just going to remove anything that's not true. And so it's been brutal, but what I found with this most recent transit, like the most recent hit or close hit, is that I'm feeling a lot more empowered. I'm feeling like I'm on track a lot more than I was a few years ago, just in terms of being in alignment with myself and my mission. I feel really energetic. I feel so much better. So I don't think it's anything to be feared, but I think, you know, it's also it's because it's squaring my moon, and my moon's the ruler of my sixth house. You know, I've had a few little health things that I had to deal with. And the good thing about these hard aspects is that they, like, you know, they force them out to be looked at. So as much as it's unpleasant, sometimes that's what brings greater healing, greater health, is actually having to have these things pop up in the first place. And now I'm feeling better than I have probably ever.
Oh,
So it's good.
good. Well, Ann Ortley, one of my teachers, says after a Pluto transit, you get a present. So feeling
Ooh.
like your health is in a better place than ever is a real present. So,
Yeah,
and I had
that's the
Pluto
best
go over
present.
my descendant, and I threw off the chains of my corporate life and became an astrologer. It's been a
Wow.
huge change. But I remember
I,
Pluto square the moon was tough. So,
it can
yeah.
be. I think for me, I think, and this is where it sort of falls into the land of solar returns and what we've got in our natal chart, because, you know, it acts as, it's a transit, right? So it's not a solar return, but I've been comfortable with the energy of Pluto in my life because I've got the moon with Pluto. It's been
Oh.
there my whole life, conjunct Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I'm meeting Pluto again, it's like there's a reminder, there's a repetition of that level of intensity. It's sort of activating that natal meaning, you know, so by transit, but it's something I'm comfortable with. Whereas maybe if someone hasn't got much, everyone's got a Pluto, but if someone hasn't really got a lot of dynamic energy within the chart, maybe Pluto's not angular, maybe it's hiding away in a cadent house or something.
That's what
When they get that
I
Pluto
have.
hit, it's going to be like, whoa.
That's what it was like for me. Yes. Yeah. Squaring my moon. It was like, wow, it's in my third house. So I started having night terrors.
Oh,
Hmm.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it
But
was
then you've got this
before.
amazing channel with all this, talking to all these people, and, you know, that's a really great way to transform that third house energy.
Oh, thank you. I never even thought about that. Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Mm.
Well, thank you for sharing that part about your chart. I love to, I think really helps people when they hear someone who's gone through the personal experience, especially with Pluto, because people can get really scared. And
Yeah.
I'm becoming more and more in love with the planet Pluto, as it really forces us to look at our shadows things, and it can be really empowering and healing
Yeah.
and
It's essential.
mm,
It's essential to really embrace Pluto. I mean, if you have any transit, sort of trying to hide from that transit or pretend it's not happening is not how to deal with it. You really need to lean into the discomfort. And then you get, like you said, you get the lesson or you get the present at the end.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so
So,
today we're going to talk about solar returns, which I'm excited to talk about with you. So can you tell everybody what is a solar return?
so a solar return is a technique where we progress. So every single year you have a birthday. The sun returns back to its natal position by degree and by minute. And so at that point, astrologers for a very long time have taken, like, I guess you could say these days, a screenshot or a snapshot of the planets and their positions. And then that chart is actually used as a forecast for the year ahead, for the next 12 months. Now, it's important to remember it is not from January to January. It's not a 12-month thing like that. It's birthday to birthday. And it's not always exactly on the birthday. It could be a day after or a day before. It depends when the sun uh, exactly arrives at the position it was when you were born. And
Mm.
and that is super important to understand the nature of events coming in the year ahead. But it's also a good way to see whether what we call fated events, or things that are in their natal promise, which is, I guess this is starting to sound a little bit deterministic, but many astrologers from a very long time ago, you know, they, like, say, Abby Mashar, who's written a book about this, he would say, you know, looking at the solar return tells us whether certain parts of the natal chart are going to be awakened. So that means certain things that you're destined to do or that are destined to happen are going to come to be in this particular solar year. If this is the year that, you know, you take off, or if this is a year where you might have a difficult period. And so by looking at the solar return, you can also see, if this is the year for certain things, and which certain things are going to come to bear this year. And also there's information about novel events. So things that might not actually be part of the natal birth chart in terms of the general theme of your life, but that are becoming themes for this period of time for you to learn and have new experiences.
I love the way you explain that. And I do want to let Stacy know we're talking about solar, the sun return. So I know you're not 2 years old, Stacy. So I'm assuming you're in your second Saturn return, which that happens only every 29 years. But this is like symbolic of it's either on the day of your birthday, where the sun comes back to where it was when you were born, a day before or a day after. So it's another type of return. Every planet has returns. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, they all have their cycle.
I wanted to make sure to help with that since I saw the comment. Okay. So we cast a solar return chart, and for when the sun gets back to where it was when we were born, and I do it in the place where you were born. So do you. Some astrologers do it where the place where the person is at that moment of their solar return, or like some people even send people on trips to go somewhere else, hoping to move planets around in some way. Can you give some insights on what you think about that?
So I tend to have learnt solar returns from people who work with Arabic astrology and Renaissance astrology. So sort of between like the year, say 800 through to like 17th century. And most of those people, maybe all of those people, I don't think any of them relocated the solar return. I think that was more of a recent phenomena, because to a lot of the scholars that would write about solar return, so Abba Mashar, or like there's a guy called, my French is so bad, but Jean-Baptiste Morin, right? He wrote about the solar return, and he lived in the 17th century as a French astrologer. Now, they weren't into relocating these charts, you know, because they thought that the solar return is what is going to, that it needed to be read in together with the nativity to see what was going to get triggered and unlocked and awakened that particular year. So if you go and move it, then you're starting to move away from that nativity. But I mean, I think it's not wrong. Like, I don't like to be too like, you can't do that, but I think it will just provide, you know, like we said before, more novel features of the year. Or, you know, say you go to it, you're living in a different town, maybe you have different exposure to different people and different circumstances. So perhaps you could just check both and just see which one's more radical for you. Like, I mean, I think that my opinion is the natal one is always going to be my preference.
Yeah, that's what I use too. I just have, and found it. Okay, so give us any insight? What are the first things you look at, or what?
Yeah. So I've been looking. I've got yours here, and I was just like, you've got such an interesting solar return. And I was like looking at it. So I mean, what I actually start with always is I start with the natal ascendant, because that natal ascendant means life. It means vitality. It means the path that you're taking on this planet. And so I always want to check what is the natal ascendant by sign and what is the planet that rules it, because that is going to planets keep their meaning in the solar return from the natal chart. That's how I do it anyway, from the nativity. So, you know, if in your chart you've got a Cancer rising, the moon is going to be the significator of your body and, you know, also your physical movement through life, right? And so I'm going to look at the moon in every chart for you to see what is Celeste up to, like what is she interested in. So the movement or the position of the natal ascendant in every solar return or every monthly return, which we'll talk about later, that will show what sort of things you're interested in that particular year, or what sort of things you're putting energy into. And
you look at, just so to get clarity, so you take my natal, so
ascendant.
My natal ascendant is 20 Cancer.
Yep.
So when you cast the solar return, which is going to have a different ascendant, most likely, do you go look to where 20 Cancer is? Oh, okay. Okay, and are we looking at 2024 or 2025?
I'm looking at both. I've done
Okay.
both of yours because I'm a bit of a nerd with these things. I love it.
I love
So
it.
I was looking at that,
I'm
you know.
getting a twofer. I'm learning about solar returns, a different technique and different things, and I'm getting insights into my own chart. Okay, so we find the person's natal ascendant, and then look at the solar
Yeah.
return chart, and okay.
And then you look at that person. So that's one of the features. So that you're looking at the actual sign, where that sign is based by house, and then you're looking at the ruler of the natal ascendant and where that ruler is placed.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the thing you need to also remember is looking at, because I'm traditional astrologer, you need to look at the planetary dignity of that, you know, of that ruler. Okay. Now, what's super interesting, which is probably a good example, is, you know, natally, Celeste has got the ruler of the ascendant in the 10th house. So that's really perfect for you. You know, you're courageous about your career. You know, you put a lot of time and energy and gusto into putting yourself out there, you know, doing this kind of thing. Fantastic. Fearlessly, like an Aries. Now, what's really interesting, though, when we look at your solar return for next year, as in from the 2nd of May 2025 through to the second, or around that period 2026, the ruler of your natal ascendant comes to Cancer in its own domicile. So the ruler, okay, so the moon is in its own rulership next year. The moon is in the 10th house next year. So that what we're looking for sometimes with solar returns is we're looking for repetition. So the moon returning back to the same house it was in, the moon coming into a sign of greater dignity by, you know, using the essential dignities. We're seeing the moon's in her own sign in the house of career and profession, ruling that house. So that's actually really powerful. And not only that, the actual cusp of the MC is very close to your natal ascendant. So that just directs your focus, like we said, to 10th house matters, so to career and eminence. And it means that the events of that goes pretty well because you've got the moon in her own sign. Makes sense?
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, the moon's in Cancer in my solar return and in the 10th house. Very closely conjunct the midheaven. So it says work is going to be very prominent in my life. Maybe home. What else would you say about that?
I'd say because it rules your natal ascendant, it's going to be where your focus is. And also, I mean, because the moon also broadly talks about the people, like, you know, the masses, like dealing with large amounts of people. So, you know, it's also in the 10th. So it could be about, you know, doing more presenting.
I'm talking at NORWAC. I'm talking for several things this year.
See, this is perfect. This is the perfect energy for it. And the other thing that's interesting is we see more repetition. So, like, I don't want to go too far. Let me give you some more. So that's a demonstration.
I don't want you to give me a full reading. I want people to learn as well. Yes. So, but I'm kind of curious your method.
So the second part that I do, so after we've looked at so always got to understand the natal ascendant and its ruler, its place in the chart, and the dignity or any aspects to that place. And that sign. It's always like you need to get that download first. Yeah. Then the second part you need to do is I usually look at the perfected, I call it the perfected ascendant, but you just look at the house which is perfected. So there's a technique called annual perfections, which perfects every single year of life, a different house of the chart. Okay. So based on my calculations, you're 55 years old.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I will be at my next birthday.
In your next birthday. Yeah. And so 44, so you're going to an 8th house perfection year.
Yeah, okay. I'm a little nervous about that.
Everyone feels that way. Everyone feels that. It doesn't always mean it's going to go bad. I mean, that's the thing. So what we then do, or what I do then, is I do a similar thing. What is the sign on the cusp of the 8th house and what planet rules it? Because that planet becomes the Lord of the year or the ruler of the year. Okay. And so what I then do is when I start to look at the solar return, I want to see what that planet's doing in the solar return, our Lord of the year. Okay, so you've got the 8th house, it's Aquarius on the cusp, and it's ruled by Saturn. Okay, so Saturn is going to be the Lord of the year or the ruling planet of the year for your next birthday. Okay, so what we need to do is we want to see how is Saturn performing that year, what house is Saturn in, And then, you know, that could show us some novel events, okay, like we said, if it's doing something different to the natal chart. But if there's affinity or there's an aspect between Saturn and Saturn, then that is what can unlock a natal promise or something that you're here to bring forward in relation to Saturnine matters. So things that could be connected to leadership, or because it's ruling your 8th house, maybe there's some kind of partnership in terms of like shared assets or investments and things like that. So yeah, it's just, it depends. Obviously Saturn does rule mortality themes and things, and because it rules the 8th house, you've got to just make sure that you're in top shape, because it could be, you know, sometimes with people who've got illness factors, it could be, you know, chronic illness. But again, this is all to be taken with a grain of salt, because there's so many significations and things that each house can mean. What I like to do when I speak to someone for a solar return is just to find what's going on for them rather than try and mind read. Just say, how are you going this year? What's happening with you? Like, oh yeah, I'm struggling with this. I want to buy a house, or I want to, so we know what's coming up. We don't need to mind read and like start to put all these things onto people about like, you know, negative problems or whatever. So yeah, so so that's my second part, is I look at the perfected house, I look at the ruler, and then I look at where that ruler is in the natal chart as well. That has to be looked at, okay, because it's going to be drawing in the influence of the house it's in. Okay, so in your natal chart, you've got Saturn in the 11th house, and it's closely conjunct the sun. Depending on the rules, it's Cazimi or it's nearly Cazimi. Like they're really close, depending on what your rules are with Cazimi. So this is interesting in terms of like, you know, 8th house topics, but that also draw on 11th house topics. So maybe there's some connection between, you know, the audience. The 11th house always makes me think about the audience. So maybe, I mean, again, mind reading doesn't really work that well. It could be as well, it could be connected to eminence again, because the sun is closely configured to Saturn. And I know that Cazimi can be quite a positive thing with Saturn being in the heart of the sun. And so maybe there'll be some partnership that you'll get involved in that is actually going to be beneficial, that is connected to working out in the public eye, like the 11th house.
Oh, I hope so.
You know, possible.
Yeah,
it sounds good. But yeah, I mean, so what I want to say is, like, I always want to see what planet, whatever the ruling planet of the activated house is, and where it is in the natal chart. And then I want to look at it in the solar return, and then I want to look at the charts together and see, can they see each other, or is Saturn like conjunct another planet? So maybe Saturn's conjunct Jupiter, and maybe Jupiter's natally ruling, you know, the natal 4th house. So that's going to bring in meanings of the 4th house together. So it's about sort of like making a recipe for the year. You know, you sprinkle a bit of 4th house, you sprinkle a bit of, you know, 10th house or 11th house, and that's kind of what the year looks like.
I love how you brought that together. The ascendant ruler, and then
there's one more part, okay?
Yes.
There's another ascendant. So that's the 3. So the third ascendant I use, or the third ruler I use, is always going to be the ruler of the solar return ascendant. Okay, so you need to check what is the solar return ascendant, what is that by sign, what is that by planetary ruler, where is that ruler placed, and then when you see that, okay, so like let's just say, for example, right now you've got the solar return ascendant is Leo, and Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun in the solar return is in the 10th house. Now that is, again, bringing your focus to 10th house matters, like we said, and that is a similar theme for next year. It's manifesting differently, but you're still putting a lot of energy and focus into eminence and career matters. So that's across the board. Now, the final thing I always think, which is important to look at, well, there's more than one, but, you know, try and keep it small, is that Leo rises, and Leo is your natal 2nd house. Okay. Now, your 2nd house is connected to resources. So that also indicates that topics around money and buying, you know, what do they call them? Movable possessions, getting together resources or saving money, that could also be highlighted for you this year, because Leo is rising in the solar return. So that talks about what is actually the rising or arising in your year ahead. But it has to be read with the natal chart to actually see what's getting unlocked. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yes. Yeah. And that has been an emphasis on expanding my revenues. Yes. And so, yes, it has been an emphasis this year so far. So you're right on track with looking at the solar return, and we can reflect back because it's it's almost April and my birthday's coming up in a month, so we can look at the solar return that just happened and see how this technique comes out. And it's been a very workforce focused year. I joined a board.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm a member of OPA. Yeah, so that was
Great.
something that came from that. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Yeah, and that makes so much sense with, that prominent sun in the, well, there's something else that's beautiful about that. You've got a prominent sun in the 10th house,
Yes.
ruling the ascendant, but you've also got, and I mean, that on its own, that could show that you're interested in career matters and you put a lot of energy into them. But because that sun, I think, is peregrine, like it's not necessarily going to bring forth the goods. However, Venus is configured to the MC in domicile this year. So I think that affiliation, that positive relationship that you have with people is what is really able to bring forth that good. And also the relationships you've got, because Venus is the natal ruler of your 11th house, which talks about your social groups. And that is coming up to the 10th house in the solar return. So it's saying it's through these positive associations that you get to have this growth in your career prospects and groups and things.
Absolutely.
So that's beautiful.
Yeah. Now, okay, so say, and this is what's happening for me next year. So, oh, how beautiful. I had Venus and Taurus conjunct the midheaven this past year. La-di-da-di-da-di. But next year, which is coming in a month or so, I have Venus in Aries in detriment ruling the Libra ascendant. So what does that speak to you?
Yeah, I was looking at this. I've got this right here. Okay, so yeah, it's always important, like we said, to start with the solar return, or to look at the solar return ascendant and look at the ruler. Like you said, the ruler is Venus in Aries in detriment, conjunct Neptune in the 6th house. Okay. Now, we know natally, it's always good to remember that what does Venus rule natally, because those natal significations are going to come in as well. So Venus rules the 11th house. So this is connected to benefactors, people that help us, social situations. Venus also rules the 4th house. So 4th house matters, home life. What I suspect is that work-life balance is going to become super important for you this year, or a need to make sure that you've got it so you don't burn out. Mm-hmm. Because there's such a prominent energy. Mars is also in the 10th house with that moon. I mean, Mars can be a so-called malefic. So it could mean that through your partnerships, because Mars is ruling the 7th house in the solar return, but it's landing in the 10th, it could mean through these types of alliances and partnerships, you actually end up working super hard. It goes well for you because the moon's in that 10th house. However, your physical body, and you can get a little bit worn out, and maybe not take care of yourself as well. So now that you know this, we can, so I do medical astrology. This is a perfect chart to look at for medical astrology, because when I see any planet in the ascendant landing in the 6th house, and I think, okay, you don't have to say it on here, but just to consider, is the health going well? Is there anything coming up that's inflammatory? What about the toxic load on the body? Because Venus is connected to Neptune by conjunction. That can describe toxicity. That could also just describe a lot of heat that turns into toxic heat. So like a tendency for maybe fevers, headaches, this type of stuff, because of Aries ruling the head. So this is not something you'll necessarily see now, but if you notice that you're working so hard, you're just feeling super stressed and you're feeling a lot of heat in the head, or maybe you're polishing off a couple of wines in the evening to just relax every day.
Last year, so I don't drink.
Awesome.
So I'm not doing that, but I work too much, and I'm trying to work on figuring out how, with all the things I have to do, how I'm going to find some better balance. Yeah, and with what's going on in the United States, it's that's probably part of it.
Pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Yeah. And the other thing that is happening in this 6th house is it can just mean it's a really hard slog, and you're putting in a lot of it. On the surface, it can look like you're putting in a lot more energy than you're getting back. But over time, it looks like it's going to work out really well for you because of that beautiful moon in the 10th house. The other thing that I like about this chart, that even though you've got Venus and Neptune in Aries, they can both see the ruler of that. So they can both see Mars, who rules it, by a trine in the 10th house. So I look at that actually as finding solutions to any health problems, and being able to moderate that. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of energy for making work and making things happen out in the world. And I think it's just about moderating the way that you do that. But yeah, I mean, also you should check the ruler of the 6th house to look at any medical or, sort of arising health matters. And you can see there that the ruler is Jupiter in Gemini. So that could talk about a need to work with nourishing the liver. So you could, this could be something to do with reducing stress, more movement, simple herbs like milk thistle or artichoke, they can help the liver. Jupiter also rules the lungs, and because Jupiter is in Gemini, there's a double emphasis on the lungs. So again, when you have the change of seasons, you might want to take something that's going to be protective for the lungs, like go see a herbalist, something like that, just to help your immunity, so you don't get like a hot condition in the lungs, because Jupiter's in a sanguine sign, so it's a hot, wet thing.
I've been having a lot of problems with allergies. And the medications I normally take aren't helping that much. So, so that's really good advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think that could be good to go see a herbalist or a Chinese medicine practitioner that can write you a formula just to get on top of that. I mean, and also the ruler of the 8th is in the 6th, and it's also the co-ruler of the Ascendant. So that does indicate that you need to just be mindful that you're working on this as part of your yearly plan, because when we see the 6th house making or having a relationship with the 8th house, there could be some connection to chronic, things becoming a bit more chronic or lasting longer. So it's a good idea to just take that a bit more seriously. But I think it just means you're going to work really hard.
Okay, well that's nothing new.
Nothing new. And also, what else I was thinking, Celeste, is this Venus-Neptune conjunction is not far from the degree of your natal MC. Right?
Ooh, so that's like shine on, shine bright, lady.
Yeah, right. It's like it's more about career. It's even though so I think it's just saying, you're going to be working in a 6th house way. Maybe you'll get people working for you as well, because the 6th house is the house of, employees. So this could also be about having to designate some of that work to other people.
Yes, I totally get that. Oh, I love how you do that. Okay, so for people who are like, okay, enough about you, Celeste. Let's go back through step 1 through 3, so people can cast their own solar returns, and then the first thing they do, and I'm repeating it back so I make sure I understand this. You take first your natal chart. What is the degree of your ascendant? And then you go find where that is in the solar return, so where it is, and look what's going on for that. So for me, it is conjunct the MC, and that brings the theme of work into it. And then what planet rules your ascendant? And where is that in the solar return? And does it have dignity? Or what is its dignity? And what is its dignity compared to what its dignity is in your natal chart? So is it going up or down?
Yes, exactly. And what Abu Mashar says is, and he wrote a book called Persian Nativities 4. He talks about comparing the good in one with the good in the other. And he says if the good is good in the natal chart, like by sense of like essential dignity, planets doing well in good houses on an angle with dignity score that's good, then they'll perform good as long as the solar return chart looks good. If the solar return chart looks problematic, then it will be a pretty average year, but it will still not be a terrible year because the nativity is still really good. Okay, but if the nativity is challenged and then the solar return chart is terrible, then it's going to be a write-off, according to Abu Mashar. But of course, there are so many other things you can do. So it's just because you see an alignment in a solar return doesn't mean the whole year is going to be a write-off. It could just mean that there will be an event in that year that is going to be significant, that you're going to, you know, if you think back to the year that you've just had, oh, that was the thing that happened, you know. But we can, and we won't do it yet, but we can actually look month by month as well, and use monthly returns. So we just progress the sun 30 degrees all the way around the chart, and then we count per house for each month of the year, and then we have effectively two different activated houses. Okay, so we have two different, so
okay.
it just gives us a
Wait,
deep
I didn't understand that last part. Can
okay,
you go through that again?
So yeah, so you can do that. You have your yearly profection, like we said. You know how you can have a yearly profection. So what you can also do is you can go in and then you can cast a sorry, let me just start that again. You can do a yearly solar return where you look at the sun returning back to the place it was. Now I use Janus software, which I find is really great. What you can do in there is you can actually just hit the exact degrees of the sun and minutes, and then you can do what is like called a 12 harmonic solar returns, or it's just like you get the sun's movement. So every time for you the sun comes back to where are we? Yeah, 12 degrees and 44 minutes of any sign. That's when we take our snapshot. Yeah. So each month when the sun comes back to 12 degrees 44 minutes of Gemini, that will be the second month. Okay, and then we're going to do a monthly solar return there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never been aware of that technique. Okay.
Yeah, and then when you do that, you can actually see what month the solar return theme is most likely to show itself. It's very delicate and it's very intricate, but you know, say for example, in the solar return, like right here, you've got the sun in the 10th house, Leo rising, and your moon is in the 7th house. You might, when you do all the solar returns for the month, so if you run the 12 solar returns for that whole year, when you see, for example, you have a Leo rising in one of those monthly returns, or you might see that the ruler of the year, so say for example, you were in a Saturn ruled year and Saturn is like rising on their 10th house or whatever, you would probably take a look at that. Now, you also have to remember that you're going to treat that monthly return in a similar way. So you would overlay that monthly return over the nativity and see what is getting unlocked. Okay. And if there's a similar thing that is shown in the solar return, so let's just say, for example, the sun in the 10th house in the solar return, if we see that sun coming to the first house and say that, you know, it's happening in Leo season, so it's happening in a square aspect, so the sun's looking at the sun, that could very well be the recipe to unlock something that brings about eminence.
Okay. Wow. Oh, so this is, wow, it gets really, really deep. How much long does it take for you to prepare for a solar return reading for a client?
You get quicker at doing this. So like I tend to, I don't take too long, like maybe half an hour. I just have a look. I look at what the Time Lords are. I think the most important thing, or one of the things I want to get across to people when you're looking at solar returns is, you know, you want to check for a few things. So you want to see, is there any repetitions or planetary returns? Okay, so say for example, the moon was natally in Taurus, okay, in the 11th house, right? If that moon returns back to the 11th house or returns back to Taurus, then that's going to be significant. This particular year is going to be significant. Is there a repetition of the ascendant? Is that ascendant the same as the nativity? Because that is going to unlock the natal promises more strongly that year. You know, any planetary returns. Also, you've got to look at aspects between, and I usually start with the Time Lord. So like I said to you, the ascendant ruler. So say for you, you've got the moon. Moon will always be an important Time Lord, right?
Yeah.
The ruler of the year, so the ruler of the solar return ascendant is going to be another one, okay? And then the ruler of the perfected house is going to be another one. So say, for example, for you, you could have the moon, you could have the sun because it's a Leo rising, and then you could have Saturn, just to say it's the 8th house here. Then I'm going to be looking at those planets in relationship to, like for the whole year. Okay, so I'm going to be interested, like let's just say it's not the moon and the sun. Let's just say it's other planets that are a bit more dynamic. So let's just say Venus and Mercury and Saturn are your activated planets. I'm going to be looking at any retrogrades of those planets. I'm going to be looking at when those planets change signs, and I'm talking about by transit. So the thing is, when you've got your Time Lords, your activated planets, they're the ones you pay the biggest amount of focus to, because they're the ones that are going to be most likely to generate events. And when they come by transit to important parts of the natal chart, or when those houses that are activated, so say in your case, for example, the 8th house, when planets move through that house, they're going to be emphasized. Or when they're moving at an angle, especially a hard aspect, an opposition or a square to those places, then you could see activation. So for example, I'll give you another example. Say someone's in a 5th house year, they ask me about having a child, and perhaps Saturn is moving through transit and it's in opposition to the 5th house. Now, traditionally, that would be not a very good time to have children, okay, because Saturn has got a gaze on the house of children, and that is not a very good thing, okay, generally speaking. But what a lot of the old astrologers would do is they would also look at the lots. So we know we've got the lot of fortune, which is lots of calculated positions between planets, but they would look at something like the lot of children, which is another calculated position between planets that's projected from the ascendant. And if the ruler of that lot and the lot itself was in a good house, maybe with a benefic, then that might provide something positive for the year in relation to children. So we wouldn't just look at the actual 5th house and its ruler to see, is this person going to have children, or is there going to be any problems with this conception? We would look at other things too. So it does get quite complicated, but the crux of it is, you know, you're looking for planets and their gaze. You're focusing on your Time Lord planets as, you know, that are the most significant. I'm not saying if for example, like you've got a transit that's coming up and it's going to hit the angles of your chart, that's going to be super important too. If you've got a planetary return, that's super important too. Anything in a hard aspect, or you know, is going to be highlighted too. But we don't use transits until we've got everything else right. So we need to have our profections. We need to have our natal places. We need to have our solar return chart. We need to know what our Time Lords are. And that the way I do it when I have a consult is I work out all that stuff, and then I use my natal chart to look at the profections. Then I go to the solar, I overlay it all, and then I start looking at transits to the natal chart and activations of the solar return using the Time Lords and just using general things as well, if that makes sense. So it doesn't take that long once you get used to it. You just have to get good at overlaying charts and just putting, then eventually you do the transits, but the transits are the triggers, you know.
Yes.
Just getting a natal chart and sticking a transit chart is not going to give you sufficient deep predictive capacity. You need to really know your Time Lords. You need to know your solar return charts. You need to know your monthly returns, when the triggers are the transits, but you need to know when they're going to be actually happening.
Okay. So that can be really helpful for you, especially if a planet's retrograding over something multiple times. It can help you figure out which time is going to be the significant one.
What I like to do, what I like to do with your chart, for example, I was like, okay, we're thinking about the year. What are the key themes of the year, just broadly speaking too? So you had, we had Mars retrograde, which was going like up in your grill because you've got that Cancer rising. So I know that Mars is not the activated planet, but it is the exalted ruler of the 7th house. You're in a 7th house year, right? So it is still important. Mars is going to be up in your 1st house. You know, that's going to be important anyway because it's on an angular house. Okay, so I want to look at that. I want to look at Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde, both in Aries, right up in your MC. That's going to be important in terms of what's happening. But, you know, whether that's going to bring about big events, if that Venus was your activated Time Lord, then perhaps it would be more significant. It doesn't mean it's not significant. You'll still see things happening, but it's just like, because there's so much data in a chart, especially when you've got 3 charts or whatever you're working with and then extra stuff, that's why I like to use Time Lords first, just to kind of minimize the data, just to make it a little bit easier to focus. Okay, what's this planet doing with that planet? Like, is that Time Lord looking at the natal place? Okay, what houses is that looking at? You know, and then once I filter down, then you can start to look at more general themes of the year and go from that.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to come to you one of these times because you are getting an intricate. You're going to tell me what I'm going to eat for breakfast next on May 25th.
I just love this stuff. It's so interesting. And when you just, it takes some time to get really used to doing it.
Yes.
But I think even my clients that come back and do this regularly, you know, they get used to the moving parts. They're like, okay, we're going to look at this next, and then we're going to look at this one. There's lots of layers. Yeah, someone just said different layers. Finding the rhythm tells the story. Yeah, it is. It's like, it's really like the things unlock, and that's what we do with, like, say, medical astrology. We don't just look at 1 year, you know, like your birthday, your solar return for this year. Medical matters, they have like a period where they start to set in like years before. So we would probably, you know, we do like what we call continuous horoscopy, where we start to dig in to solar return charts before, like year before, you know, year before, and maybe even if we have a special day, or like a decumbiture chart where someone falls sick, or if we have an event chart where someone bangs their head, then that's going to be important. And then we work with that one as well.
Yeah. Well, I could tell you, so for people, you can't see this, but there's a lot of energy in the 6th house of my solar return coming up. And my dog has Cancer. And I know that. And I know I'm a Cancer rising, and Jupiter is going into Cancer, and it's the sign of my 6th house natally. And Jupiter and Saturn are going to square. So I know that I kind of know the story, what's going on. And Saturn's in my 6th. Yes. So
you know, like that could actually be, I mean, and this is the thing, we don't have to always say, well, it has to be that you're going to have a really like heavy time of work where you're giving so much energy, and it's going to be a health thing for you and a pet thing. It could just be, a 6th house theme is the pet. You know, it is your dog, and maybe this conglomeration of planets just speaks to that as a key theme of the year, and that's what it's about.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Jupiter's gonna station.
But once that Jupiter gets into Cancer, you're going to be great.
Yeah, well, I have said, okay, if my dog does pass, Jupiter going into the sign of my ascendant, I have to be mindful. I'm not going to be walking all over the place, and I'm going to have to like really make sure I get that exercise somewhere else, so I don't just, I don't just gain a bunch of weight, because Jupiter going through your 1st house can be indicative. You're feeling good, things are going well, and maybe you're overindulging.
Yeah, too much of a good thing.
Yeah, too much of a good thing. And I already am a Cancer rising and a Taurus, so you know I like to eat as it is.
You love the good stuff.
So
I mean, it's going to be good for your career though once that Jupiter goes into Cancer. I mean, it will take a little while to get to the MC, but in that solar return year, that's where the Cancer is going to be. So I think that's going to be great for your career and for your astrology, because even when depending on the house system we use, Jupiter's going to be moving, you know, through the 9th and into the 10th house for you in terms of the solar return. So that's really great for your astrology and for your career.
Yeah. Oh, Saber Wild is a Cancer rising too. So they know, they see Jupiter coming and say, ooh,
I'm going to have a little bit extra food. No, but I mean, Cancer rising super sweet. I love Cancer rising. And I mean, having a beautiful exalted Jupiter there, I mean, it's going to work out well, I guess, as long as you have a little bit of a plan around intake. I mean, the other thing that is interesting, because remember, Venus rules blood sugar, and in that particular year, Venus is in detriment in the 6th house with Neptune. It could just be that you know, overindulge a little, like you said, with Jupiter coming to the ascendant, like this whole concoction. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind.
Yes, I will. Yeah. Oh, I love how you do that, and you're so good at talking through the process of the solar return. So yeah, and that gives people another way to look at and look at what the year that you just had, and see if you can tie the story together to what happened based on what you've learned today. Can be really a helpful thing to do too.
Yeah, hopefully that's a good start. I mean, I think it's just really a good idea for people to have a look, get that solar return chart. And I mean, depending on the astrologer some people they say, you can just look at it as a horror, which you can. Like if it depends what I'm doing. If I'm just doing medical astrology, then I will look at that solar return on its own. I'll check and see the condition of the sixth house. I'll look at what the ruling planet of the sixth is. I'll look at what the so say it's Mars in Aries, then there could be some hot choleric health matters coming up. Maybe there could be fevers, maybe there could be inflammatory conditions in the body. And if there's a connection between the first house and the sixth house, which is the individual themselves in that year, there could be health matters coming to a head that year, because when we have a connection between the first house and the sixth house, we can see that there could be something coming up, or it could just mean that the person's quite stressed that year. And then we check the eighth house and the sixth house. And so just looking at the solar return, you can get information just on its own. But I always encourage people, because it needs to be looked at together with the root chart, with the natal chart, to fully understand whether this condition is just transient. Maybe they're just going to have a period where they get really bad gastro for the year, for not for the year, for like a week, and then they're back.
Yeah.
But like, as an example, like I had a solar return when I was 21. I was traveling in Pakistan, like in the middle of nowhere, crazy trip. And I had, in my year, I actually had the moon conjunct Saturn in Cancer in the sixth house. Now, there was a repetition of the ascendant. So I've got Aquarius rising. So that moon Saturn was in Cancer, which is where my sixth house cusp is already, natally. And so I got really sick. My stomach, which is what Cancer rules the stomach, I got poisoned. I had embolic dysentery. I was very, very sick. Yeah. And remember, Saturn natally rules me and my physical body, because it rules my ascendant. And it was together with the ruler of the sixth house in that solar return year. And so that was awakening my natal, I guess you could say, a weakness of my digestive system. And yeah, I got ill. But that was super interesting, because you see the repetition of that ascendant means that this is going to be a really important solar year, and it's going to awaken the natal meaning. And natally, I've got Scorpio moon, and you could see that the moons were actually in an aspect as well. So the sixth house ruler was in a trine to the natal sixth house. So again, it's bringing together and bringing forth that promise of something not too good, actually, for that year. But it didn't last for the whole year. It was just it was because it's a cardinal sign as well. So cardinal signs in that Cancer house often indicate a one-off kind of, you get struck down and then you get up again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that it didn't take you out. Dysentery sounds very scary.
Oh my God. I was so sick. I was so sick. It was really gross. Sorry about that. Sorry about the gross example as like of all the examples, but it was suitable because you could just see that how the repetition actually works.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. So we just talked about solar returns, but you did not mention the sun. So how do you look at the sun in the solar return chart? What is that?
I always look at the sun as a general indicator of the focus of the year, because I like to think about what does the sun mean. And I usually use a traditional lens. So I think about the sun in terms of leadership and spirit and what's going to illuminate your path for the next year, And, I'll give an example of my chart. So when I was born, I had the sun in the 12th house, like I said. So I'm a bit behind the scenes. People might think I want to be out and about because I've got a big 10th house stellium, but actually I can be a little bit private and a little bit shy. This solar year, the sun actually comes to the first house for me. And so I'm more aware of my own physical body. I'm putting more energy into my health, into discovering what it is that I want to do with my life and who I am as an individual. So it sort of describes the generalized focus and what is likely to be inspirational to your spirit, I guess, for that year, because the sun has got a spiritual meaning in traditional astrology. It's less about personality and more about illumination of spirit and consciousness. So I look at it in a way.
Okay. Great. I love that.
Yeah, and then I want to also say something that's really that a lot of ancient astrologers would do, or when I say ancient, I mean like the guys from 800 and onward, probably way before as well. They would always look at the movement of the moon in the solar return to be descriptive of the way the year is going to go, or like the way that things work out and unfold. So if you think about the moon and you look at the next aspect of the moon in the solar return, that is going to be interesting to talk about the future events of that year and what things look like.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So if
that was a
nice.
I see the moon is squaring Chiron for me.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, there's always a positive way that we can look at that. Like, okay, you're going to be working toward resolving matters that have held you back, and you're going to be working with health matters or helping other people with health matters. You're going to be very motivated to like, or it could be, you know, you feel you could be struck down with something that's difficult to treat, but I don't think that's the case. You know, there's so many ways to interpret, and I might not even use Chiron. I might be looking for a planet, and if there's no planet, say it's void of course, then you could actually, they could say, some of the astrologers would say, I think Abby Michelle said that it means that the year won't really, not that it won't come to much, but it won't be as like highlighted in terms of all the years of your life. So say, for example, that moon came to a conjunction with Jupiter in Sagittarius, that could be like a great year where you have, you know, great connections with people in spiritual places and high places, and, you know, you get whatever, someone invests in your startup company or whatever. So I think it's just about looking at that moon, and it's the same in a natal chart. You always want to look at what is the moon doing next? Like, what is it? The separating from is the past. So the past aspect reveals what has come before, and then what it's moving toward describes what is coming to fruition in the future in that next solar return year.
Yeah, it's moving from a
Or in that
square
year, in
to
that solar
from
return.
Mercury and towards, if we don't use Chiron, a sextile with Uranus and then a trine with Saturn. So what does that mean to you?
Okay. I'm having a look here. Yeah. Okay. This is in the solar return for this year or next year? Sorry.
That's 2025.
Okay. Sweet. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the moon is going to, well, you know, I think that's really interesting because it's separating from Mercury, who's on the 7th house cusp. Now, I think that talks about your connections with working with others, like in this way, like, you know, consulting or like partnerships, which is what you've been doing. And that's a theme of this current year's solar return. I can see that. And as the moon moves toward the trine with Saturn, Saturn's in the 6th house, but Saturn's also the time lord of the 8th house, who's ruling next year. So that adds additional meaning. Now, the 8th house is activated, but Saturn's also ruling the 7th house. So again, that could talk about diligent work, partnerships, and investments of time and energy with other people that you're doing in this next year, because Saturn's ruling the 7th and the 8th house natally, and it's in the 6th house. So it's about maybe coming up with routines and schedules about how you can work together with other people to actually create things. And yeah, and I mean, that's it. There's no reception. Like, I mean, the moon doesn't particularly like, Saturn doesn't particularly do very well in Cancer, but nonetheless, there is still a trine. So I guess it could just indicate there is some hurdles and some hard work that needs to be done. And maybe it's going to take some time and diligence to get that happening. But I think usually the outcome comes to the ruling planet of that house, you know, and the moon is ruling the 10th house of career, and it's doing very well. So, yeah, you could also, like, with this type of thing, you could also have a look and say, okay, well, is there going to be an activation of Saturn, you know, in terms of like a real-time transit chart or something like that? You might notice, I mean, as an example, like, when will this
Saturn's
come
coming
to
to my midheaven, so I am
okay.
going to be, not till next year, but it's going to get close and then go back.
Yeah.
And so that's a time of a lot of work and diligence and effort.
You're going to take on a lot more responsibility, I think, and I think it's going to take some time to pay off, but I think when it does, it'll be really great for you. So that's how I interpret that. And I mean, if there is any like full moons, new moons, eclipses, anything on that point, especially of the activated planet, so Saturn's the activated planet for that particular profection, then I would pay attention. I always have a look ahead and be like, okay, you've got a full moon on that point, or, you know, you've got a full moon on the ruler of the year, the ascendant of the year. So say Venus rules the year in Aries, maybe there'll be some lunation, well, there will be a lunation in Aries, but maybe it'll be right up on Venus. That's going to be another moment to be like, okay, let's work with this energy. Like, let's take matters into our own hands. Like, maybe this is time for me to create a new schedule, a new routine, a new diet plan, do something like this, because Venus is in detriment, but she's in the 6th house. So how can I help her out?
Yeah, Venus needs help. It is trying.
Yeah.
She needs a lot of help. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting the picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, like Venus is sextile your natal Venus, you know. So
and
at
on
least
my midheaven, yeah.
she can see natal Venus, which helps, but also yeah, like she's on the MC, she's going to be angular, she's going to, as much as she's cadent in the solar return, she's actually comes to an angular place in the natal chart. So I think this is positive in a way that, you know, often cadent houses mean that we don't have a lot of agency. You know, it can be those years where you feel like, oh, like a lot of things are happening outside of my control and I just have to do my best to keep my head above water and just keep working, you know, like a 6th house emphasis. But when that planet or when that place comes to an angular house, especially on an angle like the MC, then we have a bit more agency. You know, we can actually grab the reins of our life and actually do something with that energy. So I wouldn't be too worried.
Okay. Yeah, I made a face about responsibility because I already work too much. I don't need more responsibility.
I reckon, like we said, get some employees or like do some outsourcing, like get like a what's it called, a assistant working for you.
Yes, I need to delegate more. Absolutely. Yes. My God. Well, this has been so amazing. Do you want to share anything else before we go, but tell any people about what you're coming up for you, or what would you like to do?
Well, I was thinking what I might even do. So I'm doing bits and pieces on here. I'm treating patients in my clinic. I have been running a course for people in terms of introduction to traditional astrology, and I might be doing another one. So if anyone's interested, they can just send me a message or whatever, and I will look into doing that. I'm probably going to do a video on this. I've got a YouTube channel that I'm slowly growing.
And what's the YouTube channel?
It's just
so people can
Danielle Ashley Healing. And I was thinking what I'd like to do is maybe put up a chart or several charts, like, you know, because it's a lot easier to show people with a demonstration. Yeah. So in the next week, I'll do a recording where I go through the techniques that I use, which and just take people through step by step as to how you delineate, or how I do it, delineating solar returns, monthly returns, and then how I put it together. I might do Elon Musk because I think he's just having such a crazy wild year. I think it would be a really interesting example to just share him.
Get out of our hair. I want to know that. Please send me the video so I can watch it. I've had enough of him. Okay.
I know he's just gone a bit off the hook, hasn't he? So yeah, I might do that because it's been such a train wreck of a year.
Leave our Social Security alone.
Right. I think he lost like $200 million.
You know what he could do? Help fund Social Security. How about that?
No, I know he could do so much with all that money. I think he's lost a third of his wealth or something, but apparently he gained it back like in some other form, and it's disgusting. But anyway, I might do his chart. I think that would be quite, because there's been some really big.
People will love that. Yeah, people will love that. Yes, please share it with me. Just send me the link when you have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love to watch it.
Yeah, I'll do that. And I'm thinking of also doing some kind of educational thing for other health practitioners in terms of medical astrology. So I'm just slowly kind of creating a program for that. But so thank you so much for having me.
And if you want to do Elon Musk chart together, and you teach and I ask questions, just let me know and we can set. And I'll be a guest.
That'd be so much more fun, because then it won't just be me talking at the screen. You are great at asking questions and interviewing, and I'd love that.
And then we can let people here know so that they can come watch it, and let me know.
I'd love that. And then I can take you back through the techniques again. And it's really great to actually show that with diagrams and with charts, because it's a lot for people's minds when they haven't practiced these techniques to kind of be like, oh, you're going to use this first chart, second chart, then you're going to overlay them and
Yeah.
run the transit.
Yeah. And people are saying, yes, they love it. There are great comments that people found this really interesting. So yeah, let's do that together.
All right. I'm
And
so
it'll be cool.
keen. Thank you. Yay.
Okay. I'll make you a collaborator on this video so you can put it on your wall if you want.
All right. I'd love that. Thanks so much, Celeste. It's so great to see you again.
It was great to see you. Thanks for joining and sharing your wisdom. And thanks everyone for coming.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye, Celeste. Thank you.
Bye.